The Korean game Stellar Blade and the arrival of Sydney Sweeney on the scene has brought into sharp focus the current trend in movies and video games to androgynize the characters. As usual, the loudest voices, those who don't know when to stop flapping their cake holes, don't have a clue what they're talking about. This whole hullabaloo raises an interesting question. Is there an objective standard for feminine beauty? And if so, how would it be determined? Well, y'all happen to be in my wheelhouse. It just so happens that one of my areas of expertise is aesthetics. That's a fancy way of saying beauty. And it turns out, yes, there is an objective standard for feminine beauty.
Architectural Outcast.
One of the largest interdisciplinary studies of all time asked this very question. Is there an objective standard to human beauty? They also asked the question, if there is such a standard, is it affected by time and culture? This study was divided into two parts. The first part looked at how the human figure was depicted throughout time and around the world. Prehistoric cave art, Greek and Roman statues, contemporary paintings. They even included literary sources, fiction and nonfiction. Anything that depicted the human figure, they tried to take it into their analysis. The study had a sample size of hundreds of thousands. They even included, for the sake of thoroughness and for research purposes only, centerfold models and adult movie stars. Although I have it on good authority that the researchers only read the articles. The second part of the study, they had tens of thousands of people from around the world look at pictures of random people and rate their beauty. One study doesn't prove anything, ever. But this study's results have been replicated in smaller studies hundreds of times. The findings of these studies are the foundation of our current understanding of aesthetics and beauty. That is until here recently, when modern-day baggage hit town. And those familiar with arcane English know I have a double meaning when I say baggage, tipping my hand where I'm going. What did the study find? Beauty is indeed in the eye of the beholder, as long as it falls within certain patterns. The bell curve rears its ugly head again. Turns out, beauty is math. There are two separate and independent elements to human beauty, the face and the body. The attractiveness or beauty of any given individual can be predicted based upon how well these two elements, the face and body, fit within a couple of formulas. We'll start with the body because its formula is simple. This is where in women you get the hourglass shape and men you get the V shape. Women, the ideal ratio of bust to waist to hips is 1 to 0.9 to 1. And the ideal ratio for men, shoulders to waist, is 1 to 0.9. The system has enough flexibility built in to allow for individual and cultural preferences. Whether you prefer Twiggy or the ladies found in Rubens' paintings, the ideal will still be a 1 to 0.9 to 1 ratio. Cultures will oftentimes prioritize one body part over another. Here in America, feminine beauty emphasizes the breast. However, in Asia, feminine beauty pays more attention to a woman's butt. But, pun intended, the emphasized body part is still expected to fall within the idealized ratio. Ladies, before you all start to panic, I don't have the ideal ratio. The human eye is very forgiving. Unless you've been specifically trained, as long as your figure falls within plus or minus 10% of the ideal ratio, you're still golden. Most people won't be able to tell the difference. The face is a complicated set of formulas based upon the size and shape of the face, size and shape of each of its parts, and the relationship of each part to each other. The formula is based around the golden section. You put all the numbers and ratios into the formula, and the final number, closer to 1 you get, the more people will perceive the face to be beautiful. A face with a number of 1 is very rare. There is a famous example y'all are probably familiar with, though, a young Elizabeth Taylor. She also had the advantage of having a perfectly symmetrical face. There is another element to beauty: uniqueness. Rarity equals value. To be considered truly beautiful, you need something that is unique to you. An example? I don't know, maybe Sydney Sweeney? I don't think there are very many people who would argue that Sydney Sweeney doesn't have gorgeous breasts. Guess what, folks? There's a formula for the ideal breast. And it's not like I've studied Sydney Sweeney's breasts intently, but what I've seen, I'm willing to bet that hers fall very close to the ideal. Let's talk a little psychology for a minute. By merely looking at something that we perceive to be beautiful, it causes our brains to release chemicals, making us feel happiness. The happier we are, the healthier we will be. Turns out, there are serious long-term health benefits to surrounding ourselves with beautiful people. What I'm telling you all is not considered shocking, big secret, revolutionary. Up until recently, it was common knowledge, old hat. So what changed? Well, 2 things changed: agenda and old-fashioned meanness. Meanness driven by anger, resentment, and jealousy. The first part, agenda, is easy: Marxism. If you're going to create your communist utopia where everyone's equal, they have to be equal in every aspect, including everybody looking the same. Beauty's an ideal. It's aspirational. And we can't have that. Communism has always tried to eliminate beauty in all its forms. And if we're going to force everybody to look the same, they might as well look like me. This brings us to the second reason, the old-fashioned meanness. There is a truism: C students rule the world, B students work for C students, and A students go into academia. I mentioned in an earlier video that one of my mentors, Blondie, tried to talk me out of doing a PhD because she said I wouldn't fit in. One of her reasons, which I found out to be true: a large percentage of academia is made up of maladjusted, bitter, angry people who couldn't survive anywhere else but academia. One of the most common things that I encountered, quite frankly, I was shocked at how widespread and pervasive it was the overwhelming hatred of beautiful women. What completely shocked me, or it just revealed my naivete, the majority of the hate came from the female professors and staff. Now, don't get me wrong, they had plenty of male allies, enablers, and co-conspirators. Think I'm being hyperbolic? I'm going to give you all an example. Now, granted, it's an extreme example, but by no means was it an isolated incident. The professor I'm going to tell you about was notorious for pulling this particular little stunt. My very first studio and my very first jury. They don't tell you the rules of jury, you learn by doing. And there's some professors, like this one, who are more than happy to try to see what they can get away with. Pull stunts that no upper-level studio would allow. We learned later that upper-level studios wouldn't even allow her in as a juror. No one had bothered to tell us that we had to say in who was or wasn't our juror. You learn by doing. I'm not even going to try to be nice. This woman looked like a thicker SpongeBob SquarePants. No neck and the same dimension in all directions. She was notorious for targeting beautiful students. The more beautiful the student, the meaner and nastier this professor was. Her goal? Make the woman cry. And if the woman broke down and cried, that's when she really got mean. The target of the professor on this fine day? They say when a beautiful woman walks in the room, all the men stop and look. When a gorgeous woman walks in the room, all the women stop and look. And when a stunning woman walks in the room stops. This woman is stunning. The professor, she really had it in for her that day. The professor had that student down on the floor in a fetal position with her hands over her head, sobbing. Did that put an end to it? The professor was just getting started. She stood over the student, spitting on her while she screamed, "Get up, bitch! Get up, bitch!" And then she started kicking the student with her high-heel shoe. Our jaws were on the floor. We were looking back and forth at each other. What do we do? What do we do? I looked at the authority figures in the room, the jurors. Most of them were shifting uncomfortably in their chairs, staring off into space, looking out the window, anything to desperately pretend like nothing was going on. Two jurors caught my attention. One of them looked like the Wicked Witch of the West, green skin and all, assuming the Wicked Witch of the West had been stuffed into a dehydrator for 6 months. Eee. She looked like she was having an orgasm watching a beautiful student being publicly humiliated. The other male juror, he was clearly getting off on what he was seeing as well. Maladjusted people incapable of fitting into normal society. Welcome to academia, Randy. When it became apparent that no one was going to put a stop to the charade, as soon as the professor started kicking the poor defenseless woman, I slid out of my chair, walked up, and put one foot on each side of the woman and just stared at the professor. As I said earlier, this professor was notorious for pulling this little stunt. This wasn't her first rodeo, and she had a part 2 to her performance. If a man stepped up and put a stop to what she was doing, she would turn her vial on him. "Oh, we have us a winner. You think you're going to be the hero that saves the day? Well, let me tell you what, you misogynistic son of a bitch. Wah, 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 wah." I followed the teachings of the great philosopher Dalton. It's just sounds combined to elicit an emotional response. The moment you call me a name, all I hear are Charlie Brown's parents talking. Wah, 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 wah. In my younger days, I had a stare that could make pissed-off drunk bikers drop their weapon. My wife still has to remind me sometimes, don't give people your look. You don't realize how intimidating you can be. I was told later that day I had my stare cranked up to 11. And it was like somebody took that professor's volume and slowly started to turn it down. She went from screaming at me, to shouting at me, to yelling at me, to talking loudly, to talking quietly, to mumbling, to incoherent ramblings. The professor took a step back. I took a step forward. Our momentum ended up with the professor back against the wall, me standing just outside of arm's reach, quietly staring. When the professor started sobbing, our studio professor, who had done nothing the entire time, spoke up and said, "Randy, you can sit down now." I said, "Yes, sir," and went to my seat. That professor went running out of the room, where she literally ran to the dean's office and demanded I be expelled from the program. What crime? Intimidating a professor. University faculty are so used to doing whatever they want without the fear of any consequences, and they're so used to the universities enabling, encouraging, and protecting them, they don't know how to react when somebody actually stands up to them, much less stops them from doing what they want to do. Their only instinct: attack, destroy, remove. After our incident, I know of dozens more where the professor pulled the exact same stunt, targeting the most beautiful students, enabled and encouraged by the faculty, endorsed and promoted by the faculty. That professor now is the department chair of a major architectural program. The good-looking professors, they know the drill. Downplay your looks or no promotions. You'd be surprised how many of them show up, hair in a bun, no makeup, Frumpy brown and tan clothes, sensible shoes. Bunch of us went out after work for cocktails one Friday night. We ran into one of these frumpy professors, but she was dressed up for the evening. Hair done up, makeup, little black dress. She was hot. She ended up hanging out with our group all evening. One of the women in our group went back to the department and snitched. That professor caught holy hell, ended up leaving the department. I can also tell you, it was the last time we hung out with that little snitch. Wait a minute. Randy, are you trying to claim that this current pushing of androgyny is driven by nothing more than petty jealousy? No. The current obsession with androgyny is driven by the Marxist hatred of all things beautiful and the petty jealousy of beauty. You have to admit, we're doing this for diversity and inclusion. We're fighting against the toxic male gaze sounds a lot better than I'm doing this because I hate you because you're more beautiful than I am. You get more attention than I do. The people I'm sexually attracted to pay more attention to you, so I have to destroy you. Here's another way of looking at things. Scarcity equals value. We are hardwired to like, seek out, and desire beauty. Beauty brings us happiness. Merely being around beauty contributes to a longer, healthier life. For women, androgyny means no curves. The very curves that human beings are hardwired to desire. In an androgynous society, any woman with the slightest curves would become instantly highly desirable. The bitter and jealous, with figures well outside the ideal ratio, and I'm talking both men and women here, in an enforced androgynous society, they would become the most desirable. One of the common criticisms against Marxism is that it goes against human nature. In this case, they're going against biology. The only way androgyny will work on the societal level is if people have no other option. And even then, it's doomed to fail. Biology is going to win. But Marxists are going to Marxist. Anytime somebody stands in these people's way, prevents them from doing what they want, their instincts kick in. Attack, destroy, remove. The Marxists and the jealous can't afford to have Sydney Sweeney exist. They can't afford to have Stellar Blade exist. They know that if people are given the choice between enforced androgyny and beauty, they will choose beauty every single time. It's been said that every joke is a revolution. Who'd have ever guessed that advocating for and promoting beauty would be an act of rebellion? I guess I'm a revolutionary now. I'll see y'all down at the protest. Some might say I'm just playing Stellar Blade, but I call it a political protest. At any rate, I hope I've given you all something to think about, and until next time, you all be safe. If you all are still here, I really appreciate it. While you're at it, why don't you like this video, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, and you can hear me yammer on about something else next time.
Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment.